Hello students, welcome to the Department of Collegiate and Technical Education. This is session 14 of the course Water Supply Engineering in third semester of Civil Engineering program. In the previous session, that is session number 13, we learnt about different types of pipes used in pressure conduits. They are cement concrete pipes, which can be either plain cement concrete or reinforced cement concrete pipes. Then we learnt about pre-stressed concrete pipes. In pre-stressed concrete pipes, the pipes are subjected to stress even before the water pressure is applied. These pre-stressed concrete can either be pre-stressed concrete cylindrical pipe, pre-stressed concrete non-cylindrical pipes. Then we learnt about steel pipes and galvanized iron pipes. Galvanization is a process of forming thin layer of zinc on internal and external surfaces of the steel and iron pipes so as to protect them against corrosion. Then we learnt about plastic pipes, which are classified into LDPE pipes, that is low density polyethylene pipes, and high density polyethylene pipes, and UPVC pipes. So in this session we will learn about pipe joints. Why do we need a pipe joint? General requirements of pipe joints and different types of pipe joints. Pipe joints. Pipe joints are required to connect the pipes to convey the water from the source to the consumers. Although the distance between source and the consumer is of a shorter one, it is not possible to provide a single pipe from the source to the consumer because of availability of pipes in smaller lengths. As the length of the conveyance increases, number of pipes required also increases and number of pipe joints also increases. And different types of pipe joints are used for different types of pipes. The pipe joints requires tools such as bench vise, pipe vise, chain wrench, hacksaw, files, drilling machine, etc. Let us know about the basic requirements of a pipe joint. The first one is these pipe joints should be watertight. They should not allow any leakage of water at the joint. These joints should be strong and capable of resisting the water pressure acting on them, and also the external load like traffic or soil acting on them. These joints should be durable and should provide a service satisfactorily throughout their intended period of life. Also, these joints should be economical. The following are these various types of pipe joints used for joining the pipes. First one is socket and spigot joint, also known as bell and spigot joint. Second one is flanged joint. Third one, expansion joint. Fourth one, flexible joint. And last one, joints used for concrete pipes. Let us learn about each and every one in detail. First one is socket and spigot joint, also known as bell and spigot joint. This socket and spigot joint is most commonly used for cast iron pipes as well as ductile iron pipes. Then in socket and spigot joint, one end of the pipe is enlarged, is known as socket, and the other end, which is normal, is known as spigot end. This socket and spigot joint are brought together and made a watertight joint by using jute, hemp, and lead. You can see in this cross section of the socket and spigot joint, this enlarged portion of the pipe is known as socket or bell end. This normal end is known as spigot end, connected by jute or hemp threads and molten lead. The procedure is, first the socket end and spigot end are cleaned and dried and laid in the trench, and final adjustments are made such that a uniform annular space is present around the spigot and socket end. Then threads of jute or hemp dipped in cement mortar are inserted in this annular gap. They are rammed as further away as possible towards the spigot end. Now a rope is taken around the pipe, and that rope is covered in a clay mold, and that rope is slowly removed, forming a empty space around the spigot end. At the top of the clay mold, a cup formation is made to receive the molten lead. Lead is heated until it is thoroughly in fluid state. Any scum formed is removed, and that molten lead is poured into the opening at the top of the clay mold. The molten lead settles around the spigot end and gets solidified, making the joint watertight. Then the clay mold is removed and the solidified lead is given a finishing touch. Any excess lead on the pipe is chiseled off. It is demonstrated in this video. This is the socket end of the pipe, and this is the spigot end of the pipe, and the jute or hemp threads dipped in cement mortar are inserted in the gap and rammed all the way towards the spigot end. Then a rope is taken around the pipe, and that rope is covered in clay mold. Once the clay mold is covered around the thread is slowly removed, forming a empty space around the pipe. At the top, a cup formation is created to receive the molten lead. Lead is heated until it is in fluid state, and it is poured at a time into the cup formation of the clay mold. That molten lead gets solidified, and the clay mold is removed, and this solidified lead is given a finishing touch. So this is the process of forming socket and spigot joint using lead, which are commonly used for cast iron and ductile iron pipes. This is of a rigid joint type. It doesn't allow any relative movements between the pipes. Next one is flanged joint. Flanges are perpendicular projection at the end of the pipes. These flanges are either manufactured with the pipe or can be welded to the pipe. The projection of these flanges should be such that holes can be drilled into it for connecting the two flanges by using bolts and nuts. A rubber gasket should be provided to make the joint watertight. You can see in this image, in this type of flanged joint, this flange is welded to the pipe. So two flanges are brought together, holes are aligned, a rubber gasket is introduced between the two flanges, bolts are inserted to the holes, washer and nuts are inserted and made it watertight. In this cross section you can see the flanges which are perpendicular projections from the pipe, the bolts and nuts arrangement and the rubber gasket for making this joint watertight. You can see this animation here. This is the rubber gasket introduced between two flanges and the flanges are brought together and these flanges are joined super tight to make them waterproof by using bolts and nuts. So this is the arrangements made in flanged joints. This is also an example of rigid joint. These joints do not allow any movement between the pipes. Next one is expansion joint. We know that metal undergoes expansion and contraction when the temperature rises or falls. The pipes also undergoes expansion and contraction when there is a considerable difference in temperature takes place. When this expansion and contraction happens, it introduces thermal stresses between the pipes. To avoid this, expansion joints are provided where it is expected to happen thermal stresses. These expansion joints nullify the effect of thermal stresses by allowing the movement of pipes to a certain extent in the longitudinal axis without compromising the water tightness of the joint. In the image, you can see here these two pipes can move in a longitudinal axis to certain extent because of expansion or contraction. To make sure the joint is watertight, rubber gasket is introduced between the pipes. In this cross section, this socket end of the pipe is provided with a flange. The spigot end is introduced in the socket. A rubber gasket is provided and a flanged ring is connected to the socket end by using bolts and nuts. Here you can see the spigot end of the pipe is allowed to move to certain extent in the longitudinal axis. The rubber gasket makes sure during this movement the joint is watertight. This flanged ring helps the rubber gasket is in its place. So this is the arrangements in expansion joint where the pipes are expected to go expansion or contraction because of considerable difference in temperature. Next one is flexible joint. The socket and spigot joint and the flanged joint we discussed, they are of rigid type. They do not allow any relative movement between the pipes. But if there is any settlement of the ground, if it is required a small degree of relative movement between the pipes, then we have to provide the flexible joint. Flexible joints are provided where settlement is expected, like in case of underwater trenches, or joining the pipes around the bend, or while connecting two pipes of different materials. Flexible joints is made by is the spigot end is provided with a bead, a retainer ring and a rubber gasket. It is surrounded by a cast iron split gland ring, and this arrangement is inserted in the socket end of the pipe. As you can see in this cross section here, the spigot end is provided with a bead. This is a retainer ring and a rubber gasket, and it is surrounded by a cast iron split gland ring. The top surface of the cast iron split gland ring is conformed with the bottom surface of the socket end. The spigot end, along with the retainer ring, rubber gasket, cast iron split gland ring, is inserted into the socket end of the pipe. This arrangement is held in position by using a cast iron follower ring, which is connected to the socket end using bolts and nuts. As you can see here, because of this beading, the spigot end is not allowed to move in the longitudinal axis, but the formation of this ball-like structure inside the socket allows the spigot end or the socket end to move either right or left or up or down. You can see in this image here and also in this video demonstration. This is the spigot end and this is the socket end. Here the socket end can move up or down or in any direction relative to spigot end. If you see the cross section, you can observe that this is socket end, this is spigot end. Spigot end is formed like a ball structure, and these two are held by a follower ring, and they can move relative to each other whenever there is a settlement is expected. So this is the arrangement of flexible joints. Next one is joints for concrete pipes. Concrete pipes are classified into rigid joint and flexible joint. First one is rigid joint. These rigid joints will not allow any relative movement between the pipes. Once the pipe is laid using rigid joint, they are fixed in their position. The rigid joints can be of two types. First one is socket and spigot joint. Second one is cement collar joint. First one is socket and spigot joints for concrete pipes. This socket and spigot joint is similar to the socket and spigot joint we learned in case of cast iron pipes. The difference is there molten lead is used to make it watertight. In case of concrete pipes, cement mortar is used to make the joint watertight. Again, here also one end of the concrete pipe is enlarged, is known as socket. Another end is normal, is known as spigot. They are brought together and connected using cement mortar. You can see in cross section here, this is the enlarged portion of the concrete pipe is known as socket, and this is the normal end of the pipe is known as spigot. Sometimes bitumen jute threads dipped in bitumen is first inserted, then mortar is introduced, and sometimes only mortar is introduced. This mortar, cement mortar used is of ratio 1:2. That is, 1 part cement and 2 part fine aggregate is used. This joint is covered in gunny bags and cured for 7 days. Next type of rigid joint in case of concrete pipe is cement collar joint. In cement collar joint, two pipes of equal diameter are brought together and a collar ring is slipped between these two joints, and this collar is connected to pipe using cement mortar of usually of cement mortar ratio 1:1, that is 1 part cement, 1 part fine aggregate. You can see in this cross section here, these two pipes are of same diameter brought together, and a collar, concrete collar ring is slipped, and the gap between the collar and the pipe is filled with cement mortar of ratio 1:1. A finishing of 45 degrees is given on either side, and this is example for rigid joint, where the pipes are not allowed to move relative to each other, and this joint is covered in gunny bags and cured for 7 days. You can see here, these are the two pipes of same diameter. We have to join using collar. The annular gap between the pipes and the collar is filled with cement mortar of ratio 1:1, and the edge is given a finishing of 45 degree on either side. Later it is cured for 7 days. The socket and spigot joint and cement collar joint both are example of rigid joint. Next is flexible joint. The flexible joints in concrete pipes. This flexible joint allows a limited movement between the pipes, unlike a rigid joint where there is no relative movement is possible. The relative movement between the pipes is possible in flexible joint because instead of cement mortar seal, here a rubber ring seal is used. A rubber ring is inserted at the spigot end, and the spigot and the rubber ring is inserted into the socket end of the pipe, and the rubber ring is compressed approximately 60% of its normal thickness to make the joint watertight. You can see here, this is the socket end, enlarged one, and this is the spigot end. The rubber ring is inserted at the end of the spigot in this notch, and the socket end is lubricated properly on the inside. The spigot end along with the rubber ring is slowly inserted into the socket end, and the rubber ring moves from the notch to the groove here. Also, the normal thickness of the rubber ring reduces to its 60% thickness, making sure this joint is watertight. And also, it is a flexible type, allows relative movement between the pipes to certain extent. Here a groove is provided and the rubber ring is moved from the notch to the groove. This type is known as confined rubber ring seal. If there is no groove is provided, the rubber rings from the notch is allowed to move furthest possible, is known as rolled rubber ring joint. This is example of flexible concrete pipe where some relative movement between the pipes can happen. So these are all the different types of pipe joints used in pipe connection. First one is socket and spigot joint, commonly used for cast iron and ductile iron pipes using lead. Second one is flanged joint, where flanges are connected together along with the rubber gasket. Next one is expansion joint, where the pipes are expected to undergo temperature changes leading to expansion and contraction of the pipe causing thermal stresses. Then flexible joint where relative movement of pipes can happen. Then joints used for concrete are of rigid or flexible type. These are all the different types of pipe joint used for different types of pipes. Now it's time for multiple choice questionnaire. Question number 1. Commonly used joints for cast iron pipes are 1. Socket and spigot joint, 2. Flanged joint, 3. Expansion joint, 4. Collar joint. Options are 1 and 2 only, 3 and 4 only, 1 only, 4 only. The answer is A. 1 and 2 only. That is, socket and spigot joint and flanged joints are the commonly used joint for cast iron pipes. Second question. The enlarged end of the pipe is called socket end or spigot end. And the answer is socket end. One end of the pipe is enlarged, is called as socket end. Other end, which is normal, is called as spigot end. Question number 3. The joint used where the settlement is expected is A. Socket and spigot joint, B. Flanged joint, C. Flexible joint, D. Collar joint. And the answer is flexible joint. Flexible joints are used where the settlement is expected, like underwater piping in curves. Okay. These flanged joint, collar joint, socket and spigot joint are all example for rigid joint, where there is no possibility of relative movement between the pipe. Question number 4. Where pipes are subjected to considerable difference in temperature, the joint used is A. Socket and spigot joint, B. Flanged joint, C. Expansion joint, or D. Collar joint. Subjected to considerable difference in temperature. And the answer is expansion joint. These expansion joints allows the expansion and contraction of pipes without leading to thermal stress in the pipes. Question number 5. Which of the following joint is called run-led joint? A. Flexible joint, B. Collar joint, C. Spigot and socket joint, or D. Flanged joint. And the answer is spigot and socket joint. We learned that in spigot and socket joint, the joint is made watertight by using the molten lead. So another name for spigot and socket joint is run-led joint. Question number 6. In which of the following joint pipes do not have sockets or spigots? A. Flexible joint, B. Collar joint, C. Spigot and socket joint, or D. Expansion joint. Pipes do not have sockets or spigots. And the answer is collar joint. We learned that in collar joint, two pipes of same diameter are brought together and connected using a collar. In the remaining joint, that is flexible, spigot and socket joint, expansion joint, pipes are one side is enlarged and another side is normal. Question number 7. Flanged joint is an example of rigid joint or flexible joint. flanged joint. Answer is rigid joint. Flanged joints do not allow any relative movement between the pipes. It is an example for rigid joint. Question number 8. Ratio of cement mortar used for joining concrete pipes in collar joint is A 1:3, B 1:4, C 1:1 or D 1:6. The answer is 1:1. A rich cement mortar is used of ratio 1:1, 1 part cement and 1 part fine aggregate, while making collar joints for concrete pipes. Question number 9. A pipe joint should be A. durable, B. strong, C. watertight or D. all the above. The answer is D. all the above. A pipe joint should be durable, strong and also watertight. Question number 10. Identify the joint shown in this figure here. A. socket and spigot joint, B. flanged joint, C. flexible joint or D. collar joint. The joint shown in this image is flexible joint. You can see the movement of pipe relative to each other. It is possible in case of flexible joint. So this ends the session here. I like to thank all my team members with whom I was able to present you this session. Thank you all.